What is one thing that Kyler Murray and Patrick Mahomes have in common? Well, they were both drafted by NFL teams and MLB teams. Now, there's a certain college football player who has been drafted into the MLB, but also has forfeited his draft selection and is looking forward to an NFL career. It is not any of those top quarterback prospects you're thinking of. His name is Jerrion Ealy. And Ealy is a college football running back for the Ole Miss football program. He's a fairly unknown 5-star recruit out of high school, and this is Who is Jerrion Ealy. In the Who Is series, we go through the backstories of up-and-coming collegiate and professional athletes. If you like this video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. I'd like to thank B. Rogers for requesting this video. Jerrion Ealy was born on August 19, 2000. Son of Vanessa Simmons and Howard Ealy, Jerrion was a spectacular two-sport athlete from a young age. He was born in Walnut Grove, Mississippi, and spent most of his childhood in Mississippi. He attended Jackson Prep High School in Flowood, Mississippi. Weighing in at 180 pounds and at 5'9", he wasn't the biggest prospect, but he certainly was one of the most talented. Besides football, he shined under the spotlight for his baseball skills. He has been a subject of many high-profile scouting reports and had many expectations. In fact, Perfect Game has him as a highly scouted prospect. Perfect Game goes all around the country finding the best baseball players and ranking them. Well, he was their #1 overall outfielder in the state of Mississippi and #3 in the country. He played baseball throughout his time in high school. He was a player who had quote-unquote good hitting tools, is an outstanding athlete, and the ball jumps off the barrel of his bat. Attending Jackson Preparatory High School in Mississippi helped many college and professional sports programs get an eye on him. As an 18-year-old, he was already being scouted by the major leagues. Now in 2018, he played in the Under Armour All-American baseball game, and he was drafted by the Arizona Diamondbacks in the 31st round of the 2019 Major League Baseball draft. Now this is a really tough decision. He could have developed his baseball skills in the minor leagues while earning money for his play, or he could go to college where he could not make any money. Well, he was drafted in the 31st round, and because of how late he was drafted, he believed that it was not his true value. So he decided not to sign with the Arizona Diamondbacks, but to sign and attend Ole Miss. Now, before we get into more of his college career, we can't forget about how he got there for football. Since he was young, he was an absolute star on the diamond and on the gridiron. In fact, from the time he was a freshman in high school, he was the starting running back. During his freshman year, he carried the ball 106 times in 12 games for a total of 896 yards and 12 touchdowns. He averaged about 74 yards per game and had a long rush of 78 yards. Immediately as a freshman, he already was a very good running back, only 4 yards short of 900 yards, along with catching 12 passes for 220 yards and 3 more touchdowns. He averaged 18 yards per reception and had a long reception of 70 yards. Now, it's important to remember that it's so hard for a player to walk into a high school and immediately be the starting running back. Well, through his hard work throughout summer camp, he showed that he was the best option for his high school football team, and he certainly did not disappoint in his first year. The next year, he carried the ball 106 times once again, eclipsing over 970 yards for 16 touchdowns and a long run of 71 yards. He played in 14 games, averaging about 70 yards per game, and once again eclipsed over 1,000 yards, except this time he eclipsed over 1,500 scrimmage yards. He caught 34 passes for 609 yards and 10 touchdowns. He averaged 43 receiving yards per game, had a long reception of 71 yards, and averaged 17 yards per catch. In his freshman and sophomore year of high school, he scored a total of 41 touchdowns. Putting up 41 touchdowns is absolutely insane, putting 13 up through the air and 28 on the ground. Now, his junior year was without a doubt his best season by far. His team played in 13 games, and he was absolutely dominating every single one of them. For his 2017 season, he rushed 180 times for 1,743 yards and 32 touchdowns. No, that is not a typo. I did not mess up speaking. He had 32 rushing touchdowns. He averaged 134 yards per game and had a long rush of 63 yards. He added onto those crazy stats with 25 catches for 578 yards and 8 more touchdowns. He averaged 23 yards per reception at 44 yards per game. During his junior year, he scored a total of 40 touchdowns on the ground and through the air. The offense was clearly run through Ealy, and Jackson Prep was leaning on their young star. Now, 2018 was a bit of a crazy time. He only played in 4 games, possibly due to him being a potential MLB draft pick. He only played 4 games, carrying the ball 32 times for almost 500 yards and 13 touchdowns. Yes, he played 4 games and scored an average of 4 touchdowns per game. He eclipsed over 121 yards per game, and he averaged 15.2 yards on each carry. At the end of his high school career, he had 4,097 rush yards on 424 carries, averaging 95.3 yards per game. He averaged almost 10 yards per rush, and he scored 73 rushing touchdowns and 31 receiving touchdowns. He dominated at the high school level, and this was the time when he was receiving his offer from the Arizona Diamondbacks. Now, if Major League Baseball teams were scouting him, it's no surprise that college programs were scouting him as well. After his time in high school, he was the 3rd ranked running back prospect and was the 29th overall ranked player nationally. At this time, he was 5'10", weighing 200 pounds. It was a fantastic prospect. He had a 5-star grade from 24/7 Sports and was graded a .987 grade out of 1. He had 14 different offers from teams such as USC, Texas, Tennessee, Oregon, Oklahoma State, Michigan, Louisville, Kentucky, Florida State, Auburn, Mississippi State, Clemson, Alabama, and Ole Miss. He was predicted to go to Ole Miss, but people were still unsure. It's really hard for a high school kid to say, no, I don't want to go to the major leagues right now. However, he also felt like he had the responsibility to go to school and get an education. Family was also very important to him, so he chose to go to a school that wasn't far from home, and that's why Ole Miss was the school of his choice. Ole Miss also allowed him to play football and baseball, which was exactly what he was looking for. He was a true freshman in 2019, and he played in 12 games. Now, he was not the starter by any means. In his first 8 games, he only had 1 game with over 10 carries. But when he got to play, he played well. In fact, in those 8 games, he had 4 touchdowns, and he had multiple games with 95 or more rushing yards. He had his best game of the year against number 1 LSU, even though his team lost by a score of 58-37. He rushed 13 times for 141 yards. He played very well all season, and he was really earning some time to be looked at as the number 1 workhorse running back. On the season, he rushed 104 times for 722 yards, averaging 7 yards per carry and 6 touchdowns. He also caught 20 passes for another 172 yards and another touchdown. Now, unfortunately, the 2020 baseball season was cut short. Ealy played in 13 games and was playing fairly well before the season ended. Going into the 2020 football season, he was in store for a large workload. He rushed in the opening game 16 times for 79 yards and a touchdown. He also caught 3 passes for 44 yards and a 51-35 loss to number 5 Florida. It was a tough loss, however, he played very well. The next week, in a 42-41 overtime win against the University of Kentucky, he rushed 10 times for 44 yards and 1 touchdown. Now, the third game of the season was perhaps the most interesting one, and an absolute shootout against number 2 Alabama. He rushed 19 times for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also caught 1 pass for 18 yards. The next week, he ran 23 times for 112 yards and a touchdown. So far in the 2020 season, he has 68 carries for 355 yards, averaging 5 yards per carry, and 5 touchdowns. He also has 7 receptions for 77 yards, averaging 11 yards per reception. He has a long reception of 45 yards and continues to be a playmaker. Now, although they may not have the best team down in Mississippi, they definitely have a top NFL prospect at running back. Ealy is a 2-sport stud, and it'll be interesting to see whether he chooses football or baseball. As of right now, he is a higher prospect in football. However, if his baseball stock rises, you may see him go to the major leagues instead. If you like this video, check out my other videos in the Who Is series. Leave a comment of who you want to see in future videos, and remember to embrace the grind.